Hello leaders, it's time for another video blog, and the subject this week is about social networking. Now, as you know, Facebook and Twitter and blogs are all over the place now, so we don't need to talk about their place in our historical context now. But I do want to talk to you about some ways that we can leverage social media as well as some things to be careful of. A lot of companies and organizations now are implementing social networking policies. For example, many of the Akron public school systems don't allow their teachers to be friends with their students. So these kinds of things are being discussed, and so as youth leaders, I want to give you a couple of do's and don'ts when it comes to social networking. So 3 don'ts, 2 do's. We'll start with the don'ts first. The first one is this. Don't do anything online that would hinder your ministry to students. For example, posting pictures of you partying or drinking, or maybe you have old pictures from a former life where you used to do that kind of thing. I would just be really careful and just realizing that you're not a kid anymore. Some of you have been out of that world for a long time and are just now stepping into the Facebook world, but you know that these students, they look up to you big time. And so just consider that when you think about the kinds of things that you post in terms of pictures, or even the kinds of statuses that you may write. I would say avoid any offensive language, inappropriate language, coarse joking. Scripture talks about this very thing in Ephesians 5 about using language that is appropriate. And then the other sort of X factor that sometimes we don't consider is when somebody else posts something on our wall that is inappropriate. And we may even think it's funny, and because we weren't the ones who posted it, we don't give it really that much thought. But I would say, sometimes people will put pictures up with foul language on them, or they may say something inappropriate and you like it. Just remember this. We may not think it, but students are on your walls, and they're looking into your world, and they're looking up to you and seeing how you interact. And so I would just say, when you consider now that you are in a position of influence and authority and leadership over the lives of students, you might just want to double check and think through the kinds of things that you're posting and the kinds of things that you're saying. Number 2, don't bash the president. As you know, we are in an election season, and I think we all have those friends on Facebook who just somehow think they've got the green light as Christians to absolutely destroy our current president with words and mean language. I would just say this. Do your best to remain politically neutral. Scripture talks about honoring the king in 1 Peter. Now, obviously, we don't have a king, but we do have a leader over our nation, and I think we need to respect him. So let's just be careful about the kinds of things that we say politically. I really don't have any examples from any of you. Me personally, I consider myself a political independent. I do not identify myself with either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or whatever other little parties are out there. I identify myself with Christ. I'm a Christ follower first and foremost. And I'm not telling you not to have a political opinion. Have one. But just do so with respect to our nation's leaders, and do so in a way that isn't inflammatory. And remember this, no matter who sits in the Oval Office, they're never going to change the heart of a man who's considering divorcing his wife. They're never going to change the heart of a boy who is addicted to pornography. They're never going to change the heart of a teenage girl embittered towards Christ. Christ changes hearts. So let's not put too much emphasis on one person. So let's really avoid some of the politically charged dialogue. And the third thing, like any other relationship you would have with a high school student, don't get too close online with a teenager, particularly those of the opposite sex. I would avoid commenting on somebody's picture if you think they look cute. Think it, but don't say it. That could be taken the wrong way, super personally, by the students. I would avoid getting into extended private chat conversations. That's the same for texting. Long private messages that thread, 5, 6, 7, 8 messages. Just remember that you're in a position of public influence, And you just need to really think through appropriate boundaries when it comes to dealing with teenagers. So, okay, on to two things that I would love to encourage you when it comes to social networking. Thing number one, get noisy about house groups. As you know, students are all over Facebook and increasingly more on Twitter. So I would say update your statuses. House group is happening tonight. It's happening this week. Get on there. Get loud. Get noisy. Let's utilize this for our house groups. Let's message students to encourage them to come. Let's post updates while we're in house group. Let's put up some pictures of what's happening in house group. You all have phones on, cameras on your phones, man. Slap something up there. All of that kind of thing. You know, the Southeast group has their own Facebook page, and they're engaging students and doing that kind of stuff. So I would really encourage you, let's get noisy about the house groups. And the more and more students see this, this could be the deciding factor of whether they want to get involved or not. And their friends see it too. We can break into their social network. So let's get noisy, man. Update away. Go crazy with it. Hashtag it. Trend that bad boy. But let's get noisy with house groups. And number two, I would love to see you stay connected to people in your house groups. What I mean by that is friend them, encourage them with scripture, continue conversations that didn't get finished in house group, recall inside jokes, follow up on the kids who missed. You know, all of these things contribute to community. And the more and more we could use social networking to leverage that, I think that we should. And so for those of you who are really savvy, man, I would say keep plugging away, because it really does matter. I mean, we're getting the message out there. And just remember that we're in a time right now where we have a lot of influence over the lives of teenagers. So if we are careful and excuse me, and discerning with the types of things that we put up, we could really use social networking to actually improve our communities and improve our relationships with students. So I would say go for it, have fun with it, and just be thinking through the implications too. Thanks, leaders.